But if we stick him in a luggage, 25 hours in a piece of luggage.
You want to just do a 25-hour live dive podcast on our
Yeah, that would pass the time so fast.
Yeah.
Can we
We'll
get
give you a ring light.
Oh, okay.
Can we get our suitcase check-in with Meteos? Meteos. It is hour 19. How's it going in there? Do you need
Haven't had air for the last 19 hours.
Hello and welcome back to The Dive, Season 8, Episode 13. We're looking ahead at MSI already. Even though we don't have LCS, though, thankfully, the LCS teams are delivering some off-season bangers already. Cloud9's already tweeting out their patented burning down the entire roster images. Jack is letting loose some rumors. We got C9 Thanatos, C9 Reapered actually fully announced coming back already. And then Licorice rumors, Zven's looking for stuff, rumors, Closer even, technically like a LCS export back to Europe, replacing Bo on KC, which is super big drama because people are like, yeah, that's probably not going to fix their issues, but that team had so much surrounding it, and a lot of people don't think that Bo was the issue. But this is one of the times where we have had in between spring and summer most hype off-season changes, because usually you don't get a lot of changes. Mm-hmm. But this is stuff that we were kind of predicting this year with so many high-powered free agents basically floating around the LCS. Fingers still crossed for Speak as well. I don't know. Maybe there's so many good players still floating around that we could make some big moves.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely exciting. I don't want to torpedo anyone's negotiations or anything. Yeah, so I'm not gonna say that I heard someone's gonna sign with a certain team or anything like that, because I know that can sometimes negatively affect negotiations. Like a team's like, oh, someone signed because of a rumor got tweeted out or whatever, and then they don't even talk to them, and the player ends up getting screwed. But I have heard there's a definite interest in Licorice from some teams and whatnot.
That's good news.
I'm hopeful that maybe we'll get Licorice back. I think that was crazy that he ended up without a team. I know that it was partially due to timing, because I had heard teams did actually make him offers for spring, but just the way that happened with him thinking he was going to be with Golden Guardians, so he wasn't interested in leaving, then Golden Guardians is gone, and then, well, too late. Other teams have already signed people. So hopefully he can get in summer, and hopefully he can kind of pick up where he left off, because he was the best top laner in the league.
Yeah, we don't want to do too many rumors, but there are a lot of exciting rumors, and your favorite player is definitely going to be playing next season. That's the takeaway.
Unless he's one of the people that just got cut.
Nope, your favorite player is
not your favorite anymore.
Your favorite player is going to be playing. We actually, more on this, because this is a community episode, actually sent out a tweet looking for questions. We're probably going to do that a lot, by the way, with our new strategy of running the dive episodes
during the off-season,
even when LCS is not going. So get back in the habit of sending in questions to #TheDiveLol. So our producer Will can grab those. We had one from Jordan
Marnie.
Does Reapered and the proposed addition of Thanatos fix Cloud9's problems? I think those are the biggest changes that really started off all this.
We have to ask the man on the inside.
Well, hopefully.
Are they back?
Are they back? I don't know, man. Every time they've been
back,
it's really short-lived. I don't know if
Are you willing to take another lemon?
I would rather them have a slow ascent than a we're back and then we're not and then we're back.
Sorry,
again.
It's not an option. You can only be they're back or they're not.
Ooh, okay. Well,
it's so over or we're back.
They're probably back, I guess.
What is our back counter for Cloud9? It's got to be at 12 now or something.
Yeah, it's every other week, I think. I don't know. It's so hard to say on these. It's what is the team's problems? You never really know from the outside, right? So it's is it going to fix it? Maybe. But Fudge was with the team for a really long time. It is a big move to replace him, but I think Reapered, I liked working with Reapered. Mm-hmm. I thought he's a good coach. He's good at managing players, because he was a pro himself. He's been coaching for a long time. I don't know a whole lot about Thanatos, but I heard he's sick.
I have a question for you specifically on Reapered, because like you're saying, we're on the outside so much, and this is especially true for us with coaches. But you have had some time on the inside, and one of the big kind of stories surrounding Reapered has always been the crazy counter picks and stuff that he either pushes players to pick or like just has faith in the players that, whatever, some favorite champion or some random thing that's outside the meta. And that's one of the reactions I saw with this signing was a lot of people excited for some, Reapered style drafts, some crazy drafts. When you were working with him directly, was it like he would bring you a champion, or was it like you had some champions that he knew you were good at but weren't quite in meta, and then he would just kind of encourage you to use them?
Ooh, I don't know if there was a whole lot of that when I was playing with him. I mean, I think at the time, this was like 2016, the only off-meta thing that I really played was like Zach at the time, because he wasn't meta, and like Reaper was supportive of it. I think he's usually pretty supportive. Like a player wants to do something, he tries to make it work. He always had this saying that like, everybody's like right in their own mind kind of thing. So he's just trying to like get everyone aligned, because he's
on
like
the same page.
Yeah, he basically says like, everyone's a pro player, like they know the game well. No one's doing something deliberately stupid. So like if it
unintentional stupidity is
if
there.
It looks that way from the outside, it's like, you just need to like bridge the gap. It's like, what are they seeing versus what's other people seeing, and getting that to work. And it really seemed like C9 wasn't on the same page that much, especially in playoffs. Like when you watch them play, it didn't look like any of the players were playing to their potential at all. Like they were all for sure not looking like themselves. So I think that could be something he could help with for sure.
It's going to be interesting. I will say, anytime there's roster changes like this, even if they're not actually going to fix the problems immediately, they do give you a bit of that honeymoon phase where it's like, oh, like things are new, like things are fresh. It can kind of reset people's mental, so to speak. It's like going into a new split. How you have a new top laner, you have a new coach. Well, I guess the top laner is still just rumored, right? That's not actually official anyway. But Thanatos won the LCK CL MVP. He also won Finals MVP twice. He won the Kespa Cup tournament MVP. So this is a guy who's insanely hyped up. Chronicler, who's casts the LCK, he also casts Challengers. He was talking to me about Thanatos a lot last year as like the number one player from Challengers that he was excited for the LCK. Like we talked to him a lot about some of the other guys that were coming over, like Castle, and when Quid came over, and so on and so forth. But he was just raving about how good Thanatos is, that like this guy is Zeus Jr., that this guy is going to be insane even for LCK. Maybe not right out the gate, but like he has that kind of crazy potential. So I think it is an incredibly exciting signing. From the people that I know, like I've watched a couple of his games just to kind of see, right? But I'm not going to profess to have watched all the Challengers League games, nowhere close. But from the people that I do know that cast it, it's like this is more hype than Berserker. This is more hype than a lot of the signings that have ever come over to the LCS, because you're getting a young player that has the potential to be incredibly good.
And even though we are not committing to any rumors, and it is still a rumor, but for this show, a couple of things. Fudge, afterwards, he streamed. He doesn't stream very much. He streamed, and his title was Homeless Man Plays Top Lane after a lot of stuff came out. A lot of times players just kind of meme on rumors and stuff like that. So that's also, not confirmation. But, he was definitely leaning into some of the jokes. And I also will say that if the Thanatos rumor is true, then it also even makes more sense, the Reapered move, because then you're bringing in Korean coach, who obviously is very, very at home in North America and can help bridge the gap for Thanatos, young Korean player that would come over. They already have, Jojo, who works well with Berserker, and I feel like, they're kind of trending that way to have like a good blend. Cloud9 has always been, I feel like, one of the organizations that has done a pretty good job of whatever players they pick up to try and make them kind of feel at home as well. And I will say, even if it doesn't fix the problems, at least the problems will be different.
That's a new problem.
because they've got different pieces. So honestly,
that's a crazy one.
it's pretty funny to say, but as a entertainment product and for viewers, I
It's exciting.
It's exciting either way.
True.
Like
They will not have the same problem.
You don't have to guarantee to me that they're gonna fix all the problems, but at least that shit's gonna be different.
Yeah. And I will say, as far as to kind of like give them the measured side of it, from everything I had heard, Cloud9 was very, very player-led in draft. So from, a lot of people that were unhappy in the community with the drafting and stuff, a lot of people were kind of, firing shots at Mithy for that. A lot of that, what I heard, is that it was very Cloud9 driven as far as the players. Like the players are like, hey, we want to play this, and he's just kind of like, okay. So I don't know if that's going to change with Reapered, or if Reapered is going to be, more of a kind of an enforcer in that way. Maybe things will change with that. It's also, I do feel bad for Fudge if he's getting replaced. I will say, it kind of sucks because it doesn't feel like he's been able to reach the highs that he reached early in his career. Like his peak to me was the first time he went to MSI, and that was 2020 or 2021, something like that. The Lee Sin meta, when it was Lee Sin top and he was popping off on Lee Sin at MSI, I feel like that was the peak of what I saw from Fudge. And then he had the role swap, very briefly when like LS came over and he was mid lane for a split and stuff, and he went back to top. And I never felt like he reached the same highs in top lane after that. And I don't know if it's just like an environment thing or, what has happened. I still think he's a really good top laner, and I feel like he got way more hate than was fair for Cloud9's failures. I still think he's a really solid laner, and I'm hopeful that if he is replaced, that he can find another team, because I definitely think he deserves to be in the LCS.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely didn't look like he was holding the team back single-handedly or anything like that. So yeah, hopefully finds a good home and can pop off.
Yep. Raz was submitting a question asking about my finger. So I chopped my finger open, my thumb, unfortunately. I just have a little Band-Aid on it because it's all stitched up. But it was I was making some ceviche with Joanne, and I chopped. You know how like you do the chop and twist with the avocado pits?
It's a dangerous.
You're supposed to do it on the avocado, not your finger.
Yeah.
So I chopped. The avocado was on the cutting board, like I wasn't like holding it. But then when I did the twist, it like popped out of the seed. And I got my thumb pretty bad. And it was like, when you ever like you stub your toe or you smack something and you're like, right? So I immediately started doing that, and it's just bleeding everywhere. Blood is spraying out of my thumb. It was like on the cupboards. It was kind of ridiculous. I ended up having to go to emergency and get it stitched up. I got 5 stitches. I've never actually even cut myself the tiniest bit. So it was kind of bad luck. I guess that the first time I did it was pretty bad. But when I went to emergency, the doctors were saying that by far the most common cause of like lacerations, like knife injuries, was people cutting avocados.
Really?
So apparently avocados are deadly.
It's because the seeds are so like hard and slippery, and like the method that people have decided on for getting them out is to just like whack the seed really hard with a
well,
knife.
that's why I left it on the ground for a second. I go like that, and then I pick it up.
I'm like, I always look at that. I'm like, holy, I'm gonna leave that up to someone else to make the guacamole, because that always even just seemed crazy to me that was like the agreed upon method is like, yeah, just like swing the knife really fucking hard at the seed and then pull that shit out. And I'm just like, what?
I'm going to a spoon from now on. I'm going to be spooning out the seed.
Yeah. It's a common misconception, though. I think Meteos brought up a good point. You're supposed to use it on the seed, not your thumb.
Yeah.
So it's.
I did, but
that?
then it slipped out and it got me. So I got absolutely boomed. I've never had stitches before. The stitches actually didn't hurt because then your thumb's so numb, but like the needles that they gave me in my thumb to numb my thumb were actually crazy. I literally thought the doctor was making a joke when she brought out this needle that was like just friggin' long, like not just the actual metal part, but like the tube. And she's like pumping this thing in my thumb, and my thumb's like puffing up to twice the size. I'm like, is that normal? She's like, that's fine.
I was gonna say you should have like kept all the other wrapping, because your original picture, your thumb was like this big with all the wrapping, and now it's just got like a regular Band-Aid on it. I'm like, it doesn't look that impressive.
No, it's not that impressive. I think I showed you the picture of the stitches. They're kind of gross, so that's why I have a Band-Aid on it.
We had some non-gross finals that happened. The LCK and LEC continued on and had some really exciting finals. Especially the LCK one was just amazing.
Banger.
The opening ceremony I feel like they almost always deliver on LCK opening ceremonies. They're really, really good with their showmanship. But this one just got me so hyped. And then the finals itself delivered 2 full 5-game series. Felt like every game too was like trying to just squeeze out the win. Even when one team got ahead, it felt like you look up at the other side of the map. I'm like, oh my God, T1's rushing Baron again. You know, one of the first couple of games there, and they just got multiple Barons they're like, oh, we're so far down, and then they just rush it, and like a couple of them get out the back, and it was really exciting to watch.
I thought it was one of the best uses of AR I've ever seen as well for
the opening.
The opening with like the player signatures and stuff floating in the air.
It felt so magical.
Like,
yeah,
that was really cool. I thought they did an amazing job with it.
It actually made me wonder like what that was like if you were there in the stadium with all the floating signatures and stuff up there.
You can't see that.
Is it just on the screen?
Yeah.
No,
it's just on the screen. It's
I wanted that to be some hologram stuff.
He's like, I wonder what it'd been like. I would have wanted to ride that dragon when it flew in at Worlds.
Yeah, that's me. Get me on the dragon.
Where did they find a real dragon?
Yeah, that's crazy. I thought they were extinct. But yeah, my understanding
they definitely did exist at one point. Yeah, the only problem is that now they're extinct.
Exactly. Like the dinosaurs.
I just missed my timing window.
Yeah. But no, it was really, really cool. The finals was super hype. It was one of the best LCK finals that I can remember. Just watching it, I thought was so much fun, especially because it's been, T1 and Gen G going back and forth for so many years. It feels like now. There's all these crazy stats about like how many times it feels like over the last bunch of years that it's been like Chovy and Faker in the finals, like always meeting up against each other. And lately, and for quite a while now, it has been Chovy getting the best of T1 and the best of Faker, regionally. But oftentimes it's like pretty one-sided. Oftentimes T1 feels like they're kind of getting stomped. This is the 4th straight title, I guess, in a row now for Chovy in the LCK. But this one was extremely competitive. I really did feel like it could go either way. There was some really cool stuff in draft. Like I thought the drafts were really exciting. We're seeing
when we had Nico support versus Annie support, like out of the gate.
Yeah, I mean, the big one for me was Kha'Zix in Game 4, right? It was like the whole series, Canyon's playing like, the Knight's Vow rushing champs like Poppy, I don't even know what else. Just
Rel,
complete.
He loves Rel a lot.
Yeah,
I don't remember which ones actually.
He played Viego, Rel, Sejuani.
Yeah, Sedge, Rel.
Poppy was his Game 5.
I've already stopped associating Rel as a jungler because she got those changes. But yeah, they're down 2-1. And he's like, pick me Kha'Zix. And watching it, I was like, surely this isn't gonna work. Like this is Kha'Zix. Like this champion's so bad right now, but it did work. He made it happen.
That's the Canyon diff.
Yeah, and then he was refreshed afterward. I feel like that was like a mental saving game. I feel like his whole team and coach were probably just like, "Ooh, you want Kha'Zix? Okay, bro." But he plays that, gets it out of his system, and he's like, "All right, I'll go back to tank duty now."
Yeah, it feels like a cleanse. It kind of does, and this is such a Canyon thing too, where he has some of the most creative jungle picks, and this is like a solo queue thing. So I feel like every jungler watching at home was like, "Oh yeah, that feels good, but that would be solo queue." There's Kha'Zix into Zven, and you can just go stealth like post 6.
It was a team with Lulu as well, where like that's I feel like a nightmare a lot of times for champions like Kha'Zix. It's like if you go in and you're leaping in, you get like wild growth up in the air, and then polymorphed and you just die.
And I mean, her E reveals you too.
Yep.
So. It looked sketchy, but he pulled it off, so it was like, yeah, I mean, I don't know, such a good series.
Yeah, I mean, he farmed a lot early, and then it didn't really take effect until he had 2 lethality items. But then if you're ever able to catch someone in isolated brush or something like that, they cannot get away. When you have Q evolve and you have Spike Rack evolve for W ready to go, multiple lethality items, then he got that one solo kill on Zven through the river, and it's just like there were a lot of moves that the Zven could not make. One of the biggest reasons you pick it into that champ is that Zven can't get away, can't beat you in the duel, and Zven has no escapes. So. Yep. If you catch him in one of these situations where he face checks you towards one of the brush, or if you ever have an isolated duel, Like that's just a huge win. And then Kha'Zix actually does have utility that can be used in pro play with the W evolve. If you have a smooth early game, like he had a pretty smooth early game, then the kiting potential for it is super big. So I always like stuff like that because he's also one where he picked the Kayn, back in the day into tank champions. Like he plays so many different champs, and in solo queue he always does like autofill and plays different roles to a super high level and climbs to the top of Korean Challenger. I'm super biased. Kenyon has been like my favorite jungler for a super long time. So I'm just excited that he's on a team with Chovy now and they're going international. And I just feel like it's time. He's unleashed. He's coming back. I want to see some fun stuff, especially because, spoiler, with Silas 2 times jungle buff, maybe we get some Canyon Silas even coming through on international stage. Some fun junglers like that. I am
dude. I wish they just made Silas a jungler as like his main role. Like when you look at his kit, he just seems like a jungler. You know what I mean?
It's so fun to play him.
Same with Echo. Like both of their kits, it's just like, why are they being played mid, dude? Like these
Echo's not being played anywhere.
True. But originally he was meant to be mid. But I mean, like it's just so fun. Like when Silas jungle is playable, like I love playing that.
Yeah, it's a banger.
But like when he's not playable, you're trying to clear your camp and you're just like dying to your camps. You show up level 3 while their guy's like level 4 full cleared. Yeah. You have 1 health.
It's literally like the Camille jungle days where you're like, all right, I'm going to do a camp. Let's go fight somebody.
Dude, it's funny you mentioned that because when they first added the jungle pets, it was like anybody can jungle. I tried jungle Camille because I was like, yeah, her problem's always clearing. Yeah. And that's still her problem. It was so bad. I was like, well, I guess not everybody can jungle.
Like, almost anyone.
It is crazy though that it's like Owner was just spamming Zin in this series. It was like three games of Zin in a row. He brings out the Kha'Zix, beats him with it, and then in Game 5 of the LCK Finals draws a Kha'Zix ban. Right, like that.
And it was instead of a Cassante ban.
Yep.
Like I guarantee you, T1 wanted to ban Cassante, they didn't.
Yeah, and then Keen solo kills Zeus twice with Cassante.
I mean, yeah, that's definitely one of those things when you're a fan, you're like smashing your keyboard because you're like, hey, that's his best performing champion. He's so strong, and we're giving it to him.
He got it in Game 4 as well, right? Like got it both the last 2 games.
Yeah. I mean, he's just such a strong champion.
The Game 5 though, when he's just getting all these solo kills onto a Zac, and you're just like, oh my God, it's insane. We went from like finals where Zeus, has problems with Doran to finals where Zeus is gonna have problems with Keen.
Yeah, I mean it's night and day when Keen was playing like Rek'Sai top. I think Rek'Sai top is so useless. Yeah, you just pick. I've hated this champion since the start, man. If you just pick something that can scale against it, I feel like you have so much more value. I even thought that Zeus was hard trolling with his builds. Like he's doing these bramble rushes against Rek'Sai. It's like, bro, Rek'Sai literally is broed and cannot auto attack you when she's healing. Like she's not. You're just getting nothing from this bramble. I've played against it a number of times, and I feel like when you just play stuff that outscales, it doesn't really do anything, and then you just show up with a better tank later on in the game. Like Zac, I feel like you can just rush Heartsteel against champions like Rek'Sai, and you just slap fight and scale HP for free, and Rek'Sai sucks compared to Zac in late game.
I mean, I haven't played against a ton of Rek'Sai top, but from the games, it looks like she just has like permanent prio, and like there was some crazy stuff happening where like the wave got to turret for like a second, and then Rek'Sai just tanked like 4 turret shots to proc demolish, and then like tunnels away. And I like looking at that, you're just thinking, okay, I guarantee you when Freak was doing his Rek'Sai changes, this was not what he envisioned the champion. He's just like, you know what? Rek'Sai jungle's not doing so well. Let's make her an insanely unkillable, like, sustained tank in the top lane. Yep. Like, so, sometimes things slip through the cracks. She's gotten some nerfs after that patch. So, hopefully MSI, like, I love Rek'Sai, one of my favorite champs of all time, but like when I see Rek'Sai being played like that, I'm like, hold up, that's not right.
Yeah, I mean, it's typical junglers like hating top laners for taking our champions. It happens.
Top laners are taking everybody's champions, though. That's just anytime a champion gets changed, they're like, you know what, we're going to give TF some crit scaling. Maybe he'll be played like AD mid or bot
TF
lane.
Is a jungler?
No, he said.
No,
he
I'm
said
saying he's taking everybody. Top lane's
okay.
taking everybody's champ. Anytime a champ gets remotely buffed, they're just like, see you in the top lane, bro. I'm going to be 3 levels up on everybody.
Yeah, top lane got so juiced because it was so isolated and complained about for so long.
It's a good role. It's still not fun, but it's a good role.
They got injected
I think
with
it's
steroids.
fun. I think it's fun.
Either way, it's going to be exciting to see how Gen G does. Obviously, a lot of pressure on them to be able to kind of have that international success. That's been the stigma that follows Chovy. Is great, you win the LCK and then you go and you lose at Worlds. I feel like it's kind of a bit overblown, but I do think this roster could really do some damage at MSI, especially with Canyon and the changes they made. Keen coming in has been so good for them as well. I think it's really exciting.
Yeah, it is. The LEC Finals also happened. It was a little bit less exciting, but it brings up a really interesting topic because after NIP and LPL started lane swap, then we saw a bunch of throughout playoffs lane swaps from multiple teams in LEC, and there are no anti-lane swap changes in the MSI patch. So this brings up a really interesting topic, which is a new version of lane swaps in a world where we have grubs and we have some champions, obviously, that are better at it than others, namely Sion, Jinx. The Tristana one where G2 used it in their first game didn't end up working like as well, but I think that this is going to be something that is going to kind of paint the face of the meta here for MSI, is going to be constantly tracking and looking at possible lane swap timers, which, by the way, don't always have to be at the beginning of the game.
Yep. So we got a question here. This one's from Rossoff Jack. He says, do you think lane swaps will be meta for MSI? Aside from lane swaps, are there other old strategy you'd like to see made viable again? Like boosted jungle, level 2 ganking, unlocked TP?
Yeah, as far as meta, I sincerely hope that it is not the go-to strategy. And I don't think that it will be a permanent thing, because you can kind of, as long as you don't completely pigeonhole yourself in draft into some really bad non-scaling at all lanes, you can, and we've had some teams already, a lot of them opt into it and be like, fine, you can lane swap with whatever champion, and we're going to have pretty good scaling also, and then make use of the quicker pushing on bottom side. I think the one that really throws it through a loop for me is the Sion. I think the Sion pick is just the GOAT for it, because even though other champions like Zac or something can be kind of similar, nobody can do a Sion passive where you get back up, you can get experience under the tower. Your death timer starts when you die, though. So your zombie is able to clear stuff, and then you're basically back up from your death timer because you're level 1 at that time, and then you can get back out and get more experience. There's not really any other top laner that can do exactly what Sion does anymore, with no revive summoner spells or anything.
It was crazy. G2 signed the boss for the finals.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what Broken Blade was doing. He was like, yeah, I'm Sion, I'm actually going to abuse this. And
was he 0-7 the one game or something at one point?
Which is actually a good tool, because then when you saw later in the game, they would send stuff to kill Sion, and Sion's worth 70 gold at this point or something,
70 gold.
It takes a lot. It takes a lot of nests to get down to that, but your gold does decrease, with the consecutive deaths, and it might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but that style.
Yeah. Well, it allows you to get XP. That's the biggest thing, right? Because top laners in lane swaps get completely starved off XP, and we saw in multiple games where it's Broken Blade is either on the Sion or moving around more on TF. There was one game, I think it was maybe the final game even, where he was up 2-3 levels and stuff on what Oscar was. Didn't always matter. The first game, Broken Blade definitely died way too much, and that was, I think, the game where he was 0-7 at one point and he ended 1-8, but they actually lost that game. But overall, I mean, G2, they just seem a cut above all the other teams in LEC, and that's been this way for quite a while. He has been G2 has been a team that I think it's when you're watching these games, it almost feels like nothing that happens is mattering or changing your like outlook on who's going to win, because G2 are so much better, it feels like, at playing the map, and so much better at 5v5ing than everyone else, it feels like, in the LEC. And I think that especially with the lane swap stuff, that was kind of demonstrated once again. There also, there was a lot of talk about, are they doing it against some of these players because they're more new players that wouldn't have played in some of this lane swap meta, where G2 has a lot of experience, they maybe have more familiarity with how to play out the lane swaps and how to kind of do these different situations. But I thought that they really handled it well. There was, especially, I'm trying to remember which game it was. I think it might have been game 2, where it was the Kalista Nico lane that Fnatic drafted for. So they're obviously drafting to try to pound you in a 2v2, and G2 hides their swap. I think Fnatic swapped to top, anticipating that they would go there, but they hid the whole time and just started bot. Then as soon as they pre-read that Fnatic's going to base, they're already basing at the same time, then they go top and they go bot. And they did this to them, it was like 3 times in a row, where every time Fnatic is swapping to try to get the lane, G2 was already swapped and avoided them. And I just thought that they showed such high understanding and such mastery of like how to play the map and get advantages from these situations where it's like you're not even necessarily a fight or an outplay or whatever. It's just like reading the map better than their opponents. And I thought that was the biggest thing that really impressed me about them in this series, because it was like a pretty kind of like sloppy back and forth battle type series. There was lots of kills, there was lots of mistakes, there was lots of that, but it never felt like G2 was going to lose to me at any point.
Yeah, the thing about lane swaps too is that some of the ones that I enjoyed the most were not ones where they started out with lane swaps. And it's something that you can do and have been able to do for a long time, where they had one where they burned the enemy Aatrox flash on top side with a gank. They didn't get the kill on him, but then Broken Blade pulls the wave, and so the wave is starting to push away from them, and they recalled at the exact same time as their bottom lane. And so the Kalista goes topside, and then they flash and they get the kill on the Aatrox with like a 6-minute lane swap out of a bad side on bottom side, and at a really good timing to get the surprise play. And that's one of the biggest advantages that you get with bringing back strategies like this, is the surprise factor. And the fact that it does take a lot of practice and thinking about recall timings in a different way, and really paying attention to pushing out waves and your wave state, and then getting in the habit of on reset going down through mid lane and then going over to the side that you're supposed to go to, rather than just brain off, default, all right, back to my position type of thing. Which to me, like, this overarching conversation of like, are lane swaps interesting or boring, really depends on how pervasive it becomes. If it's every single game, then it gets really repetitive and boring.
Conceptually, they're interesting.
Yeah,
I think strategically there are some cool things going on. Like, it was really big in the early days of LCS, and I remember, like, initially, whenever, like, on C9, when we'd play against a bad team, like one of the ones lower in the standing, you would just lane swap on them, not because you were afraid of their matchups or anything, but you're like, yeah, they're going to mess this up, and we're just going to immediately win the game. Because, like, they're every patch or so, like, they would slightly change things to make it so you just had to do the lane swap differently, whether it was, like, trying to 2v2 with your jungler in top lane against their bot lane, or, you like 4-man turd or whatever. Like, there were some different metas for it. So it was like kind of interesting in that regard, but I definitely feel like overall as a viewer, it's just so boring to watch. It's like, all right, we know for the first 10 minutes of this game, nothing is going to happen. And that's just, that's not fun for anybody. So I hope they're not a staple in the game. One thing I was kind of curious of coming into this 2024 season was, is anybody going to put their duo lane mid? Because with Grubs and Dragon both being like high prio, like, it seems like you would just get a lot of control from being mid lane, but we haven't really seen that happen. I still think it's possible. I think someone could do it, but haven't seen it yet.
Yeah. Some of the like big surprise plays too have been in the timing windows when people are swapping back, which if you're doing it to a side lane is way easier for like the support jungle and AD carry to wait in the brush and then jump out and kill whoever's swapping back in your lane than it is in mid lane. Mid lane's doesn't have as many, especially with the brush getting moved back. You're not going to get as many as those surprise kills, but I 100% agree as far as the objective control in mid lane and it being central on the map.
We even had a question about that from Great Alexander. Says, with lane swaps coming back, why doesn't anyone swap their duo to mid so they can move up to Grub's Herald faster and be the same distance from Dragon?
That is the question that I'm wondering the same thing. I mean, it's tough to say. Every once in a while, you'll like kind of see people do it, not in the beginning of the game, but like around level 6 or so. Like if you have a mid laner who can wave clear well, you'll like send them bot with TP. So we've kind of seen it happen. Sometimes it almost feels an accident, but I don't know. I think it could totally work in the right situation.
It'd be really interesting, and just seeing if there is like some sort of like new evolution of lane swaps, or people are trying something crazy at MSI, especially if you're an underdog and this could be in the meta. Maybe we'll see something really mixing it up. Also, some pretty insane stats. I mean, Caps has just been running the LEC for a really long time now. G2 obviously as well. Has been extremely dominant. So G2 has won 14 of the 20 titles in the LEC since 2016 spring, but of those, multiple of the ones that they lost were when Caps was still on Fnatic, right? And Fnatic hasn't actually won since Caps was on Fnatic. They won both of the titles in 2018 when Caps had actually come up. I think he first started playing in 2017, and then all of these titles, like that they've won since. It's just insane how many titles he's stacking in the LEC, and it just feels like no one can touch him, right? Like he's the faker of the LEC, he's the whatever you want to say, but with even more regional dominance. And so it's hard to even find the appropriate comparison, because there's no one really or very few people that even kind of approach that many titles and that like level of longevity and dominance within a region. Like it's just been nuts. Like no one can touch him. And another stat here for Caps, out of the finals that he has been in since 2018, and I know people obviously kind of feel like LEC titles are a little bit fraudulent now because there's technically 4 titles per year now with the new system that they have, so it's not the 2 title format, but still he's 12-1 in finals since 2018. That's including his 2 Fnatic wins. It's like he just wins, right? Like Fnatic was owning when he was there. Now he's been on G2 forever. That is title finals that he has been in, so he hasn't been in every single final, but still like absolutely absurd numbers. He's been dominating forever, and G2 I think again is the big hope for the LEC going international, right?
100%. It's a happy marriage of Caps is the best player, and the teams have realized that, and so then he often is on the best team, both because he makes it the best team, but also because they want to put extremely competent and high-powered players with him, and so it's just like you get this level of dominance where.
So you think he's getting carried?
No.
Okay.
Wow, I can't believe Kobe thinks that Caps is good. No, just kidding. We got a question here. This one comes from Rez. It says, stronger region, LEC without G2 or LCS without TL?
Huh? I mean,
G2 is way more dominant in Europe than TL is in NA, right? Like before playoffs, I don't think anybody would have thought TL would win. During the regular season, they looked super average, even kind of weak toward the start. Granted, I think they are really good. Like they scaled up super well.
Obviously, the comparison is just TL1, right? So it's like champions.
It's just I feel like it's just not a totally fair comparison, because it's like you're taking the team that's always winning EU for forever, and then comparing it to like the team that just somehow won.
I feel like that question is like a no-brainer, like bait.
Well, I think it's.
But I would be happy. I would be happy to drop any team. Like if you're talking about like you have a tournament between the
yeah, we can sacrifice anybody, and they have to give up G2.
Rivals, and they have to give up G2, and they can pick whoever the hell they want. We have to give up. I'm liking our odds.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of seems like the question might be more about just looking for overall strength of region, which is why they asked that way. And I feel like that's so hard to say. Like one thing that has been getting discussed a lot is people really dogging on EU this year. Like even their own broadcast. Like when I watch that, I don't know. I don't really like it, honestly, because I don't get how you can call a region bad from just watching the region play itself, right? It's like, it's one thing if it's an international tournament and EU does bad, and then you're like, wow, EU's so bad. But like, it's EU playing against EU. Like, how can they both be bad? Somebody's winning the game. So I don't know. I feel like they're probably not like significantly ahead or behind how they normally are. I think there's been a decent amount of roster turnovers in LEC, and I think anytime you have really turbulent rosters, the overall level is probably going to go down because every team is trying to like reinvent the wheel, like figure out how to play together. You get like some really awkward looking plays, before you're really like on the same page with your team and whatever. But I don't know. I think there's too much negativity on LEC right now.
I hear that, but I also think that there's the reason for that. I feel like people get more negative on a region when they start doing worse international. And so it's like, yeah, they're talking about them in the region play, but there was this period of dominance for EU that I think really, where the region really started to thrive and viewership started to really go up and people started to really get excited for LEC and the potential of LEC, winning a world championship and so on, right? And we had G2 make a world finals, and we had Fnatic make a world finals, and we had these teams reaching semis, and we had G2 win an MSI, and it was like this crazy exciting period where, EU fans were thinking and people were feeling that it's like this is the rise of a region that is going to be competing with LCK and LPL, each and every year. And with the ERLs, there's so much hype around the ERLs and how much they're going to be doing for the league going forward. There's going to be all this incredible crop of new players that are going to really push them to the forefront and get them that world championship. And it has kind of gone the opposite way, right? And I think that is where a lot of the criticism and a lot of the frustration comes from, is that the results are not what people want internationally. It feels like they're going the opposite way where, especially with Worlds last year, it's only one event, but it was like, okay, even G2 lost to NA, right? And then that's where I think these feelings of frustration and stuff start coming from fans and from people, where they're like, okay, we're not getting a groups, we're not challenging LCK and LPL, and now we're losing to NA as well. And so it's like that feeling of regression that I think creates frustration and creates like, more criticism and stuff of teams.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. They definitely haven't done as well internationally. I guess my issue with it is just when it like spills over into the next LEC season, where it's like, I heard even on like their analysts, people saying stuff like, oh, this is like, if this is who we're sending to Worlds or MSI or whatever, like we're in trouble. I'm like, how can you say that based on this game that's happened domestically? I don't know. I think it's just, it's so easy to just get overly negative. So I prefer, because like these are pro players. This is the best of your region. Like I just think they deserve respect. Like not just be, dogged on just because they did poorly at the last international tournament.
Yeah, and especially I feel like this happens a lot at MSIs where your region is just playing the best of all the other regions, and you're going up against number 1 and number 2 LCK and LPL. Well, that's pretty stiff competition. Everyone's wondering, wow, why did we get blasted by these teams? And you're seeing all these best of fives, and you're like, we had no hope. Like we're not even close. Then it kind of puts you against like the stiffest competition that there is in the entire world. So
it's definitely tough. We have another question. This is kind of on the other side of the coin from seanatonin. Says, how long has it been since we've seen more positive sentiment for the teams NA is sending versus the teams EU is sending to MSI? Because it does feel like the other side of that is people are more excited to think about LCS. People are thinking, oh, LCS has been really competitive this year. Maybe that means we're going to do better at MSI.
Is that even the general sentiment, that there's more positive sentiment for the teams that North America is sending versus the teams that Europe is sending now? Because we had nobody really thought Team Liquid was going to win. Mm-hmm. There definitely is a positive sentiment around their improvements and their accomplishments, especially for playoffs. But I don't know. There's not like this overwhelming, like, oh yeah, we're gonna win.
I don't think there's that. I think it's more positivity just around the league and the teams and stuff in the league in general.
It's definitely the LCS was more competitive this year than it's been. But again, when you're only playing domestically, that could mean everyone got a lot better or everybody got a lot worse, and it's not always clear to tell when you're just watching the teams face against one another.
Plus the reality is even international isn't always clear because it's such a small sample size, right?
Yeah.
It's like you go and your best team that has a good chance can just have an off series or an off game or whatever, and then it's like, oh, you're screwed, you're already out, right? It's like, even for EU, G2 was doing so well in scrims, and that's obviously a meme, Scrim World Championship and everything, right? Like at the end of the day, you have to perform on stage. But that being said, they were doing really well, and there was so much hype around them. And then it's like you could say, hey, they just had a bad day, had a bad series, had a bad whatever. Maybe they would have done better if they replayed. That's kind of the tough thing about competition.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, we're just gonna have to see what happens. I think realistically, it is gonna be super hard if you're NA or EU when you're playing against LCK, LPL. Like these are just regions that are so much bigger. Like they have so many more players, and so then, like just by numerically, they're gonna have more good players statistically, right? And so, it's an uphill battle. I think we're definitely underdogs, but upsets happen.
I mean, I am excited for this year because of the play style changes that we saw for our teams, heading there. So, I don't have my sights set on winning, and I don't think we've had our sights set on we're going, and we are definitely going to beat T1 and BLG and these types of teams. I've got my sights set on. Oh yeah, we beat EU at Worlds. I'm really hoping we could beat them again. Like that to me feels like the victory, and the excitement is can we beat basically our peer, which is LEC, and as underdogs, it's crazy exciting if we get super close games against T1 or BLG or something like that, or if we get an upset, then we're just celebrating in the streets and everyone just goes crazy. So that to me is why it's still, even after all these years, I still get so excited for the international events, because you have your peer that you're actually feel pretty good against, and then you can reach for the stars too and have the amazing upset stories.
Yep, should be really good. And on that note, how should we commemorate each moment the APA solo kills Chovy, Faker, and/or Knight? This one comes from BeAFanPodcast. You said celebrating the streets would get an upset. Yeah. What does APA get? A parade? A statue?
I think after he completes every one of those solo kills, then we have the full celebration in the streets. We probably start with a statue first, and not one of the small statues.
No,
like a real,
a big bronze statue,
a giant one. We should probably put together something about his inevitable all chat as well.
Yeah, Captain America.
There's some yapping that needs to happen for sure.
Captain America is gonna stand proud.
So also though, because we kind of jumped over our MSI patch.
Well, I was just gonna go back to that.
Yeah, and I was like, this is actually a really big amount of changes. I feel like usually for the international events, it's a little bit more tame, but I kind of agree with the look here, where the sentiment was like, oh, we want a big shakeup in pro meta heading into this international event to keep it exciting. And they actually started it out with a change to neutral objectives. I don't know the last time we had a change to neutral objectives heading into an international tournament, but moving the grub timer from 5 minutes to 6 minutes, and changing the fact that you only need 4 of them to get one of the Void Might spawns now means that on first grub set, you only need to grab one of them to have the threat of second Void grub set giving you the extra pushing power bonus for split pushing for later, and they increase the power of the true damage dot on the stack. To me, I'm like, whoa, this is actually really cool as far as trying to change up the look of the pro meta heading to an international tournament. And I can't remember exactly every single patch before an international tournament, but I don't think that we've ever had a big change to neutral objectives. They also did the thing where Baron's attacks are going to do more damage. That one I think will have a little bit less of an effect, although with the amount of Baron rushes and sneaks and all-ins that we saw in especially LCK Finals, that is going to be, it seems like a T1 nerf here to increase Baron damage.
I think it's going to be really interesting, though, and I do like the idea behind the Void Grub changes. So the idea is obviously that you desync it, and then people are going to have to fight over the objectives, right? Like that was the kind of proposed idea, is that they don't want people just trading grubs for Dragon every single time and just being like, all right, you get that, and I take this. So they're hoping that there's going to be more conflict. They're hoping that there's going to be more fights around this, which I think in some ways can answer some of the concerns about potential like lane swap stuff, because a lot of lane swap stuff is about picking something that has really heavy scaling and then avoiding a bad matchup and just being able to push towards late game. If people are feeling like they have to contest at Grubs and have to contest a Dragon, if it becomes more important, I don't know if it will, with early game stuff, then maybe that kind of is by proxy like hurting the ability to lane swap and go for those strategies too.
One thing that I think is interesting is their intent that they said is they want to desync Grubs and Dragon, and like that'll be true for the first spawn, but in theory, right, it makes it a lot more clear what you're trying to do as the jungler, right? It's like you take Dragon on spawn and then you go take Grubs on spawn, but that'll actually sync up the respawn if you do that, right? It's like Grubs is a 4-minute spawn timer, Dragon's 5, so I don't know if these changes are actually going to accomplish that goal in the way that they want.
Even if it's just for the first one, though, don't you think that's kind of cool?
Somewhat. I don't know. I'm not really totally sure it's going to change a whole lot. I think the Grubs strength could, but like my general sentiment with Grubs is that there's sort of a win more mechanic, because if like I've had games in solo queue where like I'll get 6 Grubs, but if you never actually have a lane with prio, like if you never get a pushing lane, it actually does nothing. If you don't get any plates with your Grubs, it's almost a waste. And then afterwards, like if your team is ahead and they have a ton of Grubs, like I almost welcome that, because they're going to keep trying to push to actually hit towers, and then you're just going to kill them repeatedly. So I like the idea. I'm not totally sure these changes are going to accomplish it, though.
Well, one of the big things that doesn't even have to do with the desyncing is that Grubs are just weaker right now. Like everybody has pretty much come to the consensus that the Grub buff, like Dragon stacking, has been more influential on games than the Grub buff, and so buffing the damage by a significant margin from 6 to 8 true damage DPS is a significant margin, as well as only needing to grab 1 from the other set if you get a full pack of 3, and then just needing to secure 1, which has already been one of my preferred strategies for solo queue, is kind of like a drive-by on Grubs. If you have Smite, you can almost instantly take 1, depending on your jungler. Like you can burst 1 down super quick. You don't have to deal with lanes collapsing or anything. You can take it so quickly that by the time, even if they have vision on it, that you're seeing, you've yoinked 1 with a Smite, and then you can play to the other side of the map and continue clearing. So I think that with the increased power is almost the bigger part of it, and lowering the threshold to just getting 4 to spawn a Void Might for split pushing for later makes it a bit more interesting to me than what it has been for the past couple months, I guess.
It's interesting because 4 is the first spawn, but 5 is not the second spawn anymore. So 5 is kind of useless. It's like if you can risk fighting to get 5, that literally doesn't matter at all anymore, because you have to still get to 6 to be able to actually spawn the second one, I believe. So it'll be interesting. I'm kind of personally excited for it. I'm hoping that it is going to create some more action. There's also quite a lot of individual champion changes. I know we got a question relating to that. This says, how will the MSI patch impact the NA mid laners? Both are mostly mage players, and all the changes worry me. This one's from petersbenton, and he's of course referring to a lot of the changes. LeBlanc got some buffs, Silas got some buffs. There is Hui buffs as well. Rise got some buffs. So there's quite a few different changes here. I don't know that these changes are specifically going to hurt our mid laners per se. Azir got nerfed. If you're talking about APA, he's not really that big of an Azir guy anyway, and his brand of mage is Ziggs and Azael, and that stuff didn't get touched at all. For Jensen, maybe the Azir stuff hurts him a little bit, but Hui got buffed, so that's pretty good. What do you guys think?
Yeah, the big thing for NA is that Azir is going to be enabled, even if he's nerfed. The fact that he was disabled from our whole playoffs, I don't really know if it's going to help or hurt, but as a viewer, I feel like the viewers lose when Azir's playable. I don't know. I'm a bit of an Azir hater, even though I think he's fun to play and he has his high moments, but he's too safe. They got to do something about how safe he is, because as long as you have a hyper scaling carry champion who's really hard to punish, while also having this random kill setup when he slides in on you, it's just gonna make the game so slow. And you end up with the Azir quirky metas, and just nothing happens, and then one fight happens at 30 minutes and the game's over. Like, that's not what we're here for.
Yeah. Well, the Sylas buffs are purely jungle, so the Sylas ones don't really have the effect on mid lane.
LeBlanc and Kali and Ryze.
Yeah, I mean there are a lot of mid lane buffs, but I don't think, because one of the things that people were worried about was when they saw Sylas and Akali on the list, are we going to return to this Zeka cream meta of the mid lane? Our mid laners are going to be completely outclassed in Akali Sylas matchups that basically determined worlds previously. It's not going to be the case. The 30 base health on Akali is nice, and the Sylas buffs are purely jungle, so I'm not too scared about that. The change for APA with Azir getting back, I feel like is a negative, and he's hasn't been the best on Azir. I think it's good for Jensen, bad for APA, so I guess we kind of split on that specific one. The Hui buffs are kind of nice because that's just pure damage on his passive and on his Q. He was already a really good scaling mage, but wasn't one of the priority ones that people were using because he's not as safe as those other options.
I think Wei's super cool. I think he's really strong too. The more I see people play him, I feel like people are just getting better and better at doing his combos and learning his limits. Like, when you can actually fully kill someone, like you'll see some games where Wei will just like flash in at somebody full HP, like do the chomp, ult them, and then like finish them with a QW snipe, and you're just like, wow, that was crazy. Like I don't even know what happened. So I would love to see more Wei get played. He's fun.
To me, the biggest change though is Jhin. I was kind of shocked that they were buffing Jhin this much, because I already think there's a lot of mobility creep, and then they're just adding extra move speed on him. And then they buffed his Q attack damage percentage by 9%, so that they could do this like meme buff or meme nerf of taking one base damage off to get him all fours, basically.
They love the fours.
On his damage. But then I was like, well, you used your meme to slip in this Q attack damage buff, which attack damage ratio on the champion that quite possibly builds the most flat attack damage because his item and his passive. I'm like,
by a lot, isn't it?
This is a lot. Yeah. This is a huge buff. So I'm actually excited for the AD carry shift, because Kai'Sa was already good and everyone's like focused on this Kai'Sa buff, which is, especially with Jackie Love there and stuff, is gonna be quite scary. But I'm kind of excited. I want to see some Jhin play. Jhin is like such a good early game snowballing champion. The thing that obviously holds him back is tank killing.
Yep.
And so we'll see how that affects the meta. But I love it when there is something in the game that is strong, but does have a clear weakness of being weak against super tanky front lines. Mm-hmm. But still, if it's strong enough, then you can play around that. You can do like have a Mordekaiser on your team who also got some changes that were kind of controversial. Your Mordekaiser ults the enemy tank. Guess what? Jhin doesn't have to deal with any tank frontline if Mordekaiser's got him in the death realm and is draining him down. So I feel like this patch opens up so many cool like combinations and counters, where it's like no one lane, I think, takes actually the star role here. The Graves buffs especially also jumped out to me as these are solo lane Graves buffs. Okay, this is crit buffs for Graves. We could have Mordekaisers running around. We could have Graves solo laners running around.
Dude, those Graves buffs are kind of hard to, I think.
The reload speed thing is hard to know.
Like that kind of sounds like a lot to me, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think
faster
so.
reload.
So
like, I don't know.
Especially with some of the builds that were floating around, like a couple months ago, where people were doing like Storm Razor and multiple of these procs for Graves. Like, there were some terrors in solo queue, especially mid lane Graves, Insanity. I actually played a game with him, and he did this Stormrazor rush proc roaming mid Graves that was just like you perma-shove mid, and then you're running around, and it's direct buff to the attack speed and the crit skillings here. So I don't know. I like when we have possibilities like this pop up, and it will reward teams for something we've been trying to reward teams for all split, especially in the LCS with being on live patch, which is, adaptation pretty quickly and innovation and being willing to try some things that are not currently all meta.
I think the Mord changes are really interesting too, and they were kind of controversial. I know LS was like adamant that the R change doesn't matter at all, and there's kind of people on both sides of the argument. I think LS's general argument, to paraphrase, is that if Mord is ahead, then he's gonna kind of kill you anyway, and like you can't afford to build QSS when you're behind. And if Mord is behind, then he ults you, and you just like kill him in the ult, so QSS doesn't matter. And so he's kind of saying, hey, it doesn't actually matter in that way. I had a kick where I was playing a lot of Mord, and I started watching some like Korean Mord Challenger one trick guys and people like that to see how they played. And I would say from watching them and from my experience, I kind of disagree with what Ellis is saying, because one of the things that I really learned is I think this is something like when I first started playing Mord, and I think a lot of people do that. You get in the habit of just like you just ult the person you can kill, and that's how you think about team fights, right? So if you're really behind, sometimes Mords will just like ult the enemy Zyra support or whatever, and like, well, I can kill this guy. And so one of the things that I learned watching some of the like top one tricks is that even if they can't beat the enemy carry, they just would ult the enemy carry and then just run away and like do things like that. And just that it's like, okay, yeah, I can't kill this guy 1v1, but I ult their Jinx or whatever, and then my team slams them in the 4v4, right? It's like, okay, you're playing Jinx Lulu and Karma mid and whatever, and now all of a sudden you don't have your AD to actually do anything. And so it's like, and you talk about, oh, Jhin buffs and Jin's coming back. It's like, well, Jhin is garbage against Mordekaiser. If you get ulted, like, I don't really care how far ahead you are, you're probably not killing this guy. And so I do think in that lens it can matter. Sometimes it's not about winning the 1v1, it's just about removing the strongest member from the fight. And I even saw some things like where this Mord one trick I was watching was doing things like going anathemas when behind, and he would just like anathemas the enemy carry and ult them in every single fight. And it's like, okay, good luck, right? Like, yeah, sure, I'm useless, but you're useless too, and you matter more for your team. So I do think there are situations where it can matter. I do think what he says is true in that, like, it doesn't always matter. And it's like, if you're getting pounded by a Darius top lane, like, and you ult him, he's still going to keep pounding you. If he can't QSS it, it doesn't really matter. So, like, there's definitely situations in where I agree, but I'm more on the side that this can actually be pretty impactful. Because if you can't QSS Mord ult, and he can remove, like, you can't play one threat teams against Mordekaiser anymore, because he can just ult your one threat in every single team fight and then die, but the fight's already over.
Yeah, to me it seemed like it would maybe open up more damage-oriented Mord builds. Like, you could go maybe a squishier build, stuff like Sork Boots and, like, Rocket Belt, because while I agree that it's not like Mordekaiser is the same as, like, a Malzahar where, like, QSS just completely stops him, but the fact that they always have the option, right? Say you're playing against some like Jinx Lulu type comp.
Yeah, exactly.
Like Jinx will get a QSS at some point. Maybe she won't rush it. Maybe you'll be able to alter a couple times, but eventually, like it's not even worth you trying to build to kill him because you are countered by the item. So I think it could open up more options because, like, I don't know, like, as a carry, getting ulted by Mord's not a great time. Like, if he's building damage, like, he'll probably kill you. Like, obviously, barring one of you being really ahead or behind.
Yeah, unless you're, like, there's some champions that super blast him, like Vayne and stuff like that. It's like,
yeah, I mean, we don't talk about playing melee against Vayne. That's just gross.
But I will also say, I feel like this is just something that could just remind people that Mord exists as a champion, because there have been a lot of blind pick tanks in situations where I felt like Mord is actually quite good, even throughout this entire year. And sometimes just little changes like this, even if it's not going to be the defining factor in the game, just makes you try the champion again and realize good spots for it.
Yeah, I'm trying to look through and see if there are any other big ones. I mean, the
Olaf changes, Cloud9 is going to really like those. Blabber's going to be great at MSI with the Olaf buffs for jungle.
Woo! It's funny because when I tweeted out this question, the first reply was from the Cloud9 account.
When does Cloud9 play?
Yeah, exactly. Asking when Cloud9's gonna play. Who's gonna tell him?
It might be a bit.
Yeah, might be a bit there.
The one that stands out to me is actually the Ryze changes, because like we haven't seen Ryze in a really long time. Every once in a while he'll pop up in solo queue, and like he doesn't seem that far off being playable to me. I think normally when Ryze is playable, he's kind of like always played kind of deal. But I mean, 2 seconds off early W and the slow going from 35 to 50 is like, I don't know. Does that change your trading patterns? Are you able to like all of a sudden confirm your cues on someone who's slowed by a little bit more?
That's what I was mainly thinking, because 50% slow is actually really significant. So you don't feel like you always have to do empowered to get the root.
Yeah.
So
I mean, even stuff like, there have been times where people run like Comet on Rise and just take W level 1 and you're just spamming it on them and
yeah, hit
just winning
confirm.
trades.
50% slow is definitely enough to guarantee that. So
I would not be surprised if Rise came out at some point.
For sure, I agree, especially because with buffing all the mana items, Rod of Ages has been in a good spot. Seraph's is in a really good spot. So the items are ready for him, and some pretty nice W buffs. I think
cooldown buff is nice too.
I think that would be interesting, especially with a Void Grub buff. If we pull it back to the objectives, that also helps out when you have split push champions, and Rise is really good at split pushing as a mid laner, which not all of these mid laners that are getting buffs are good split pushers. So that could be another angle there. I think that's a pretty interesting one. The other one for mid lane is Galio, because they kind of took a big brush and they buffed a lot of different types of mid lane champions. They buffed some immobile mages, some split pushers. They buffed Galio for team play as well. 5 move speed. Whenever I see base move speed buffs, I automatically, like, that to me is always going to be really impactful, especially for a champion that does do a decent amount of roaming to side lanes and even getting like in range for ultimates and stuff. The lower cooldown on Q early, just 1 second. I don't really know how much that affects his lane, if his lane is still going to be too painful in a lot of spots to play. But
yeah,
as like a counter pick, he could be.
These were some
useful
follow-up changes. I know like the last couple patches, Galio got some, I wouldn't call it like a full rework, but he got like some pretty big changes to try to like change how he plays a little bit, not be so much of like this one-shot guy, but more of like an AP bruiser, like sustained damage. So I honestly have no idea. I haven't really seen him at all. I assume he's not very good if people aren't playing.
Yeah, I definitely want to see if that's enough to nudge him into some angles, because again, a lot of these are possible changes can have really big impact if you're the first ones to use them. Mm-hmm. And then, if everyone's practicing against them, then it gets a lot lower, and you lose the surprise factor, and the counter pick angle is actually a lot bigger too.
Yeah, I think it's also worth like when you look at these changes, thinking about like what champs are we going to see a lot of at MSI, and when I think of mid lane, I'm kind of thinking like Aurelion Sol, and how these champions lane against him, because he went from this champion that's like he's an APA pick. But I feel like now
Chovy owned on him.
He's a caps and Chovy pick too.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's just good. Like, he's so strong. He gets away without building a mana item. He just gets Leandry or allies, which are just insanely strong items. I would not be surprised to see his priority go way up going into MSI, and then you wonder, like, how does Akali, how does Rise, how does Galio actually do in ASOL? Like, what are his bad matchups? So that's definitely something to keep in mind.
Yep, it's going to be interesting. We have another question here. This one comes from wangvscruz, so a little bit of a pivot, but it says, would you rather see Zven play in summer or keep him in the broadcast?
Play. I as much as I love Zven content, he's the content king, I really want to see him play, and I know that he really wants to play also. So I want what's going to make him happy.
Yeah. And we can still get him to come on and do some casts. We have pro player casts and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Why not have both?
Why not have both?
There you go.
True. I mean, like, he's got so much passion for the game, and that's something that like you can't fake that. Like, he got, I think he's ranked 6 or something in solo queue right now. He's insanely high rated. He's really good. He's been streaming a lot too.
Yep.
Definitely one of my favorites to watch. And yeah, he's just super good, super knowledgeable. He's played multiple roles in LCS. So I think he absolutely deserves a spot somewhere. Like, he's just so smart about the game.
Yeah, I hope he's going to be able to find one. I feel like he probably should be able to find one.
I mean,
teams would be like kind of crazy to not pick him up.
Wow, it's so exciting / frustrating that we had this whole big segment about our between spring and summer off-season changes, and there are so many rumors going around. But obviously we don't want to hurt anyone's negotiations or anything. But you should be interested in Zven if you're one of the teams in the LCS.
And we have also obviously MSI is coming up pretty soon. Kobe and I are leaving in 10 days, I think now. We are going to try to do an episode next week. Well, there's going to be an episode next week. We're not sure on the exact date because we're going to try to coordinate with some regional experts and people to kind of talk about and basically do a little preview for you guys. If you're wondering why we didn't talk more about the individual teams, because next week we're going to try to do that, and we're going to try to have people talking about the teams coming from EU, from LPL, from LCK, and obviously we're watching the games. We're going to talk about it as well and kind of give you guys a bit of an MSI primer for what you can expect from some of the top teams from around the world. So that should be a lot of fun. And then I know we've talked about this. We are going to try to do some episodes from MSI as well, but because broadcast is basically every single day while we're there, we're not sure exactly on the schedule, and we're not sure exactly on kind of like what form that's going to come, but we will keep giving you guys that info as we have it, and hopefully we'll be a little bit more locked down on what the MSI episodes are going to look like by the time we do our next episode, our preview episode next week, and then we can kind of give you some more information on that before we head off to China.
Yeah, the next episode, guarantee we're gonna try, and we will succeed in getting the next episode with regional experts. The MSI ones, we're also going to try. Might end up looking like the old school hotel scuffed podcasts, but those ones were pretty popular.
Those were
too.
good.
Those were fun. We might even like call in Meteos with some delay or something and get
I love that.
some robot head Meteos
We could
going
just
on.
bring Meteos to China with us.
Or we could just
smuggle me in,
Yeah,
put me
you,
in the
you
suitcase.
could fit in a carry-on.
So we've got like 25 hours of travel is our itinerary that was given to us.
Yeah, you want to just?
for
I'm
one
so
way.
jealous. I'm so jealous of that.
But if we stick him in a luggage, 25 hours in a piece of luggage.
You want to just do a 25-hour live dive podcast on our?
Yeah, that would pass the time so fast.
Yeah.
Actually, the dive does IRL streaming.
There you go.
That's
Time
our
flies when you're
plan.
having fun.
in the airplane. We're gonna have to
From inside a suitcase.
Can we
We'll
get
give you a ring light.
Oh, okay.
we get our suitcase check-in with Meteos. Meteos, it is hour 19. How's it going in there? Do you need
Haven't
food?
had air for the last 19 hours.
Well, if it'll be a carry-on, we'll like squirt water in every once in a while.
Yeah,
You
there
know.
you go.
Okay.
Okay. Also, we could pop open the carry-on and give them a
Yeah.
little walk up and
Yeah,
down the
exactly.
aisle. Walk our Meteos.
Perfect.
Exactly. It sounds like it's all been figured out. Well, that's going to wrap it up for us for now. Remember, if you're watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode of The Dive. You can also check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any podcast platform. And thank you to everyone who sent in the questions for this week. Again, Kobe tweeted that out, but make sure you can keep sending them in with the hashtag TheDiveLOL, because we're going to be keeping some more of these style of episodes for the offseason when LCS isn't going on. We want to keep The Dive running, and this is how we're going to do it. Be sure to tune in next week's episode for that MSI preview, and we will tweet out when we know exactly when it's going to come out, so look out for that. Thanks for watching.